The new CEO walked in like he owned the building. Technically, I guess he did. Or at least the board said he did. The man was younger than I expected, early 40s, tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage, and the smug, manicured confidence of someone who'd never had to wipe his own mistakes. First order of business? Restructure. Classic move. No time wasted. Departments were shuffled, projects axed, titles eliminated. HR called it streamlining. We called it a bloodbath. I kept my head down. For now. My name's Eric. I'd been with the company 12 years. Started as a junior liaison fresh out of college, worked my way up to head of international client relations. That's not just a fancy title. I was the only person in our entire firm fluent in Mandarin. And for the past 5 years, I'd been the go-to guy for our largest clients in Beijing and Shanghai. Clients who represented 38% of our company's revenue. But apparently, that detail got lost in translation. It was a Thursday when he summoned me to his glass-walled office. Not HR. Not a manager. The CEO himself. I knew what was coming. Eric, he said, barely looking up from his screen. I'm going to make this simple. We're letting you go. No small talk. No explanation. Just those words, letting you go, delivered like a dry cough. I blinked. May I ask why? His eyes finally met mine. Performance concerns, he said. Honestly, you're not critical. My pulse kicked up. Not critical? Sir, I'm our only liaison to you. I've reviewed your file, he cut in. I don't need incompetence clouding my vision for the future. That last part. Incompetence. I bit the inside of my cheek. He had no idea. He hadn't looked deeper than a surface-level spreadsheet. Didn't consult the partners. Didn't even ask who handled our Mandarin-speaking clientele. He just wanted bodies out the door. I nodded slowly. Got it. Just one question. He raised a brow. Do the clients from Nanjing still land on Monday? He smirked. That's the plan. I leaned forward, smiled, and said, then I sincerely wish you good luck on Monday. And I walked out. I didn't go home. Not yet. I stopped by my team, what remained of it, and gave them a simple heads up. I was gone. No explanation, just that it was time. The ones who knew the real structure of the company looked horrified. But there was nothing they could do. They weren't decision makers. I cleaned out my office in silence. Took my framed photo of my dad and I on the Great Wall. Grabbed my notebooks, including the one with handwritten phonetic breakdowns of our clients' regional dialects. I left behind the corporate laptop, wiped, of course, and the ID badge. By the time I left the parking garage, my access was already revoked. That weekend was oddly peaceful. I slept like a baby. No guilt. No anxiety. Just anticipation. See, those clients? They weren't just business relationships. We'd spent years building something real. I'd visited their families. Shared meals. Celebrated Lunar New Year together. We'd sent gifts, translated marketing, navigated cultural nuance. They didn't just like me, they trusted me. And not one of them knew I was gone. Yet, Monday arrived like a guillotine drop. The Beijing delegation flew in at 6:30 a.m., touched down in JFK, and arrived at our headquarters by 9 o'clock sharp. 7 of them, all impeccably dressed, all fluent in Mandarin, and only 2 spoke passable English. They were expecting me. Instead, they got a junior sales associate and the new CEO. Witnesses later told me it went downhill immediately. The CEO greeted them with a confident welcome and a handshake that went unanswered. The Chinese delegation began asking, politely at first, where Mr. Lu, my Chinese nickname, was. When the CEO said, Eric, he no longer works here, one of them asked, in Mandarin, if this was some kind of joke. The CEO didn't understand. So he laughed. Big mistake. Within 10 minutes, the room fell into chaos. The translation software they tried to use was a joke. Mistranslations ranged from embarrassing to insulting. The CEO kept smiling like a politician while the delegation grew visibly cold. One of them reportedly got up, walked to the window, and stared out in silence. That's a very, very bad sign in their culture. By 11 a.m., they were gone. They didn't cancel the deal. They pulled all of it. Every contract. Every agreement. Gone. In one visit. By noon, our company's stock price took a hit. Small, but noticeable. Internally, alarms were ringing. I got the first call that afternoon. Then the second. Then the third. My phone buzzed nonstop. I didn't answer. Not yet. I wanted it to marinate. By evening, I had 2 voicemails from the CEO himself. The first was measured. The second, frantic. We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. No, there hadn't. I went out for hot pot that night. Sat at a quiet table in Flushing, Queens, surrounded by steam and the smell of Sichuan pepper. I texted a friend still at the company. How bad is it? He replied instantly. He's drowning. Legal's in a frenzy. They're trying to do damage control, but the clients won't return emails. I took a sip of my Tsingtao and grinned. Good luck on Monday, jackass. By Tuesday morning, the office looked like a war zone. My phone lit up with texts from former coworkers. Words like imploding, meltdown, and he looks like he aged 5 years overnight kept popping up. Apparently, the CEO had spent the better part of the morning in back-to-back crisis meetings, trying to spin the disaster with our Chinese partners. Didn't work. Not only had they pulled all active contracts, but word had already spread through their network. Other potential partners in Southeast Asia were re-evaluating relationships. Translation, they didn't trust us anymore. And all because the genius at the top didn't bother to ask who kept the gears turning behind the language barrier. HR tried to do damage control too. I got an email from my old manager, clearly not written by her, asking if I'd consider consulting temporarily while they transition new hires into the international role. That made me laugh out loud. They fired me like I was disposable. Now they wanted to rent me back like a fire extinguisher during a blaze. I didn't reply. That night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was someone I didn't expect, Mr. Zhang. He was the head of the delegation from Beijing. A quiet, calculated man. Not the type to call out of the blue. Eric, he said in Mandarin. We didn't know you were gone. I figured, I replied. They didn't see the need to tell anyone. There was a pause. Then he said, it was disrespectful. To you. And to us. He didn't need to say more. In Chinese business culture, relationships are everything. Loyalty, trust, face, it all matters. And the company had spit on all of it. Mr. Zhang ended the call with, we will not be returning. But you, we'd like to stay in touch. On Wednesday, my LinkedIn inbox exploded. 3 different firms in international markets wanted to talk. One of them offered me a salary nearly double what I'd been making. And they were upfront. We saw what happened. We value cultural intelligence. I hadn't even started looking yet. Meanwhile, my old company's PR team released a limp public statement about transitioning to new international protocols. It was corporate speak for, we screwed up and have no idea how to fix it. By Friday, the board called an emergency meeting, and I heard whispers that the new CEO was already being questioned about his future with the company. I didn't celebrate. Not really. I didn't need revenge. This was never about vengeance. It was about competence, respect, and the price of arrogance. The man who fired me thought I was silent background noise. Turned out, I was the only one in the room who spoke the language. It was the following Monday when I got the call that surprised me most. Not from HR, not from the CEO, from one of the board members. Eric, the voice said, calm and deliberate. I believe we made a mistake. I didn't reply right away. Let the silence hang. That kind of pause unsettles executives more than shouting ever could. We weren't fully informed about your role in the China accounts, he continued. The CEO acted prematurely. Understatement of the year. Then came the pivot. We'd like to offer you a consultant position. Generous pay. Flexible terms. Just until we stabilize communications. Oh, so that's what this is. Not about respect. Just damage control. What happened to not critical? I asked, calm but sharp. He hesitated. Look, Eric. You know how these transitions go. We don't always have full visibility into operations at the ground level. That's the problem. I cut in. You made decisions from a tower without ever looking down. Another pause. Finally, he sighed. What would it take to get you to help us fix this? I thought about it. Then I said, a written apology. From him. The CEO? Yeah. In Mandarin. The line went quiet. Then the call ended. I didn't expect them to agree. I just wanted to make it clear I wasn't desperate. And honestly, I had options now. That international firm I'd spoken to, they flew me out to Singapore within the week. First class. 5-star hotel. All expenses covered. Their CEO met me in person. Humble. Sharp. Asked me real questions. Listened to the answers. They wanted me to build out an entire East Asia expansion unit. My own team. My rules. They weren't just offering a job. They were offering legacy. Back home, things kept spiraling. The Chinese clients issued a formal statement to my old company. Your recent personnel changes indicate a lack of cultural competence and strategic foresight. We are terminating all future negotiations. Ouch. That was the final nail. By Thursday, the CEO was placed on administrative leave. By Friday, he was gone. Poof. Just like he'd done to me. Funny how fast things turn when the one person you dismissed turns out to be holding the bridge you're trying to cross. The news broke that Friday afternoon. CEO resigns amid international backlash. It wasn't resignation. We all knew that. He got pushed. Hard. The board needed a fall guy, and he'd gift-wrapped himself the second he fired me. I didn't feel vindicated. Not yet. There was still one piece left. The company reached out again, this time through a senior partner I actually respected. He opened with something unusual. We want to fix this, Eric. And we know we can't do that without you. That's the first time anyone had said that out loud. We're not just offering your position back. We're offering full oversight of international strategy. Direct line to the board. Autonomy. Budget. Team. Name it. It was a hell of an offer. A month ago, I might have jumped at it. But now I had a better one. I told them I'd think about it. The next morning, I was back in Singapore. I'd flown in quietly for a second meeting. They walked me through their proposal again. Not just leading international accounts, building the entire global bridge. I wouldn't be reporting to a CEO. I'd become one. Why us? I finally asked. The founder smiled. Because we watched how you handled getting fired. You didn't retaliate. You didn't beg. You let reality do the talking. That's leadership. They got it. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. Dignity. Knowing your worth. Back home, the apology letter arrived. From the company board, not the CEO. He was probably halfway to some consulting gig already. They offered me a public statement, a strategic advisor, title, a salary bump, even stock options. But none of it mattered. I sent a 2-sentence reply. I appreciate the offer. I'm declining, on principle. That afternoon, I signed with the Singapore firm. I wasn't going back. Because when you walk away with your head up and the world tries to crawl back, you never return through the same door they kicked you out of. 6 months passed. I was in Singapore, thriving. Built a new team from scratch, smart, hungry, and globally fluent. Our expansion into Beijing and Shenzhen, seamless. We did more in 5 months than my old company had done in 5 years. Funny thing was, I hadn't even reached out to my old clients. They came to me. One by one, they jumped ship. Quietly, professionally, without drama. Just contracts canceled and new ones signed under my name. I didn't poach. I didn't pitch. I just picked up the phone when they called and spoke to them the same way I always had. In their language. With respect. By August, we'd captured 70% of my former employer's East Asia pipeline. They never saw it coming. Then one day, I got an invitation. An industry conference in Hong Kong. Panel speakers from the biggest firms in the region. Global media coverage. And guess who was listed as a keynote? Their new head of global markets. A guy I'd never heard of. I RSVP'd. Not out of spite. Not for a scene. I just wanted to walk in, shake hands, and let the room do the math. When I stepped onto that hotel ballroom floor, I could feel the tension shift. People whispered. Some stared. A few executives from my old company looked like they'd seen a ghost. They didn't expect me to be on the VIP list. Didn't know I was now running the competition. And when I shook hands with 3 of their former top clients, now mine, they finally realized. I hadn't just landed on my feet. I'd leveled up. Later, during a Q&A, someone asked the new head of global markets how they planned to rebuild relationships in China. He hesitated, mentioned renewed cultural investments and diversified communication strategies. I held back a grin. That's corporate for we still don't have someone who speaks the damn language. After the panel, one of their old board members approached me. Eric, he said, glancing around nervously. Can we talk? I nodded politely. Sure, but only in Mandarin. He didn't laugh. Because it wasn't a joke. The board member tried to smile, but it wilted the moment I answered him in Mandarin. He stammered. Perhaps. English would be. I shook my head once. No, I said. That's not how I do business anymore. He nodded, flustered. Understood. We stood in silence. The kind of silence that chews on a man's ego. He finally managed. We didn't understand your value, Eric. It was a failure of leadership. A convenient rewrite of history. What he meant was, we gambled on the wrong man, and we lost half our clients because of it. I didn't respond. I just waited. We're prepared to make a generous offer, he continued. Partnership. Autonomy. A full department, however you want it. I could almost hear the panic beneath the polish. Not because they missed me, because now they needed me. I looked past him to the media wall, where my name was freshly printed beneath the logo of my new company. Bigger, cleaner, bolder. And I knew what I had to say. I'm not interested, I said quietly. He blinked, but I didn't let him finish. I don't work with people who speak over silence instead of listening to it. He tried again, but I'd already turned away. That night, I sat on my hotel balcony, looking out at Victoria Harbor. Lights glittered across the water. My phone buzzed with messages from contacts, clients, and competitors. All of them saw what happened. I hadn't burned bridges. I'd built a new one. Taller. Stronger. Mine. And I realized something powerful. Revenge doesn't always need an explosion. Sometimes, it just needs elevation. After Hong Kong, things changed. I didn't need to chase deals anymore. I was the deal. My inbox became a revolving door of invitations, industry panels, mergers, buyout proposals. My old company? They kept reaching out through intermediaries. Former colleagues. Third-party recruiters. Even one of the board members' assistants tried scheduling a casual coffee. Each time, I gave the same answer. Unavailable. No explanation. No delay. Just those two words. It drove them insane. I knew from whispers that the fallout hadn't stopped. Internal reshuffling. Slashed budgets. Layoffs in the international department. Apparently, they'd even hired a Mandarin-speaking rep from outside the industry, some rushed hire meant to fix optics. But it didn't matter. You can't fake trust. And you sure as hell can't build it overnight just because you suddenly need it. Meanwhile, I was building something real. My team in Singapore had grown from 5 to 30. Fluent in 6 languages. We weren't just a bridge, we were an empire of access. What we offered wasn't just translation. It was understanding. And companies were willing to pay for it. Then, out of nowhere, I got a message that stopped me cold. Not from my old job. From him. The ex-CEO. I didn't even recognize the number at first, but the signature at the bottom of the message burned itself into my memory. I see now what I didn't before. I should have listened. You deserved better. I hope you're thriving. M. I stared at it for a while. Then I did the one thing you never could. I didn't reply. Some people think power is about being loud. I've learned it's about knowing when not to speak. Because when the person they ignored becomes the one they can't reach, that's when they finally understand what they lost. 6 months after the conference, I heard they'd finally filled my old position. Not with one person. With 3. A full-time Mandarin speaker, a cultural consultant, and a senior client liaison to manage the damage I left behind. 3 salaries to replace one man they once called not critical. And still, they were losing clients. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Reputation travels faster than any press release in the international business world. Smaller than you think. Every move echoes. Every misstep becomes a warning. Their name had become a cautionary tale. Mine? A benchmark. Meanwhile, my work had taken on a life of its own. We'd expanded to Seoul and Kuala Lumpur. Our strategy wasn't flashy, it was effective. We prioritized relationships over impressions, humility over headlines, and the results spoke for themselves. Our client satisfaction rate sat at 98%. Not because we were perfect, but because when we made mistakes, we owned them, learned from them, communicated. Something my former employer never learned to do. One day, my assistant forwarded me an email. It was from a junior rep at my old firm. He wanted to pick my brain for advice on navigating a partnership in Chengdu. Said he admired my career path and hoped I'd be willing to talk. He didn't know the history, didn't know who I was to them. He just saw someone respected, someone who built something real. I agreed to a 15-minute call, not to talk down, to pay it forward. Because power isn't just what you can take. It's what you choose to give away. Later that night, I stood looking at my office skyline, Singapore glowing beneath me, and thought about how far I'd come. Fired, dismissed, forgotten, then replaced, respected, remembered. It came in a thick white envelope with gold trim. Hand-delivered. No return address. Just my name, written in careful cursive. Inside? An invitation. My old company was celebrating its 40th anniversary. A gala. Black tie. Full press coverage. A celebration of global partnerships and innovation. I actually laughed when I read that part. Then I saw the final line, handwritten in ink. We'd be honored if you'd attend as a distinguished guest. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just an attempt at revisionist history, like we'd parted on good terms, and I hadn't watched them collapse under their own arrogance. Still, part of me was tempted. Not for revenge, but to close the loop. I showed up. No fanfare. No entourage. Just me, in a black suit, calm and deliberate. The moment I stepped into the ballroom, heads turned. People whispered. Some smiled. Others looked like they'd seen a ghost crawl back in through the front door. A few of the newer staff smiled and greeted me like I was royalty. They had no idea what had happened. To them, I was the man with the reputation, the legend. But the senior team? They couldn't meet my eyes. The new CEO, the one they installed after the implosion, came over, glass in hand, trying to act casual. "We're glad you made it," he said. I nodded. "Nice place. Expensive." He chuckled awkwardly. "We've made a lot of changes. Learning from our missteps." I let the silence stretch. Just enough for him to feel it. "Good," I said finally. "I hope you keep learning." I didn't stay long. Just enough time to be seen. Because I wanted the message to land quietly. I wasn't there to beg for validation. I was there because I had outgrown the place they once thought I didn't belong. On the way out, I passed the old board member who once asked me to return. He looked older, smaller. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Sometimes, silence is the loudest goodbye. It's been a year since the gala. I haven't heard from them since. No new calls. No new offers. Just silence. The kind they used to give me when they thought I didn't matter. And now? They finally understand what that silence feels like from the other side. My company's grown. We've opened offices in Tokyo and Jakarta. The team I built is thriving, culturally fluent, emotionally intelligent, razor sharp. They know the difference between speaking to someone and speaking with them. And every time we land a new international client that left my former employer, I don't gloat. I just forward it to my assistant with 2 words. Add them. I get asked sometimes if I'd ever consider writing a book. Sharing the story. The rise, the fall, the rebuild. But I've never been interested in revenge porn or power fantasies. Because that's not what this was. It was never about destroying anyone. It was about proving one thing. That respect is not given to titles. It's earned by presence. The guy they fired? He was invisible. The man I became? Undeniable. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if that CEO had asked me one question before letting me go. "Tell me what you actually do." But he didn't. He assumed, dismissed, discarded. And in doing so, he did what every weak leader does. He cut loose the one person holding the rope. And then acted surprised when the bridge collapsed. I don't think about him much anymore. Not because I've forgotten, but because I'm too busy building something that can't be taken away. Not with ignorance. Not with arrogance. Not even with a signature. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what follows you, long after you've walked away. And mine? It's already speaking for itself.